guys, welcome back. It's Cowie here with the Ugler Essence channel. This is fun because this is actually turning into a whole Sukkot series, which I wasn't planning, but obviously that's something that God wanted because it's working out perfectly. So today I'm going to talk about our journey to celebrating this biblical feast, and it is a biblical feast. If you look it up and you really do your research and study, this is something that God commanded his people to celebrate. And it says you will do it forever. Also in the word it says that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He never changes. So then if he says to celebrate something forever, then we should be celebrating it too. And it's not a burden. It is actually an incredible joy. And it brings so much peace to you and to your family and to your home. So today I decided I'm not going to get into a biblical study on this. There are already so many studies out there on Sukkot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some of those studies for you, and I'm going to link them below so you can go and study that yourself. What I'm going to talk to you about today is our journey to celebrating Sukkot, why we celebrate it, why we see it as such a beautiful, enjoyable thing. And to do that, I'm going to have to start with Christmas. I'll explain that to you, the connection there, eventually, if you'll just stay with me. So we celebrated, just like pretty much everybody else, we celebrated Christmas because we believed that it was, in fact, Jesus's birthday. However, when Travis and I got married, I don't know, there was a really interesting shift for the two of us. I'm not really sure why, but it was almost as if God was like, okay, you guys are together now. I want you to start paying attention. I mean, that's just the only way I can really explain it. So shortly after we got married, we celebrated our first Christmas, and it was not enjoyable. We were not able to get a tree. We didn't have the money for it, which was kind of painful for me because I was always the one at home who decorated the tree. That was an important thing for me. So that was kind of hard for me to deal with. Couldn't get a tree. We didn't hardly have any presents because we couldn't afford it. And also there was a lot of depression that went into it. You know, we had nothing to do. We had nobody really to celebrate Christmas with, and we realized something's just not right here. Why do we feel this way? It should be a time of joy, but we're feeling sorrow and pain, frustration, and all sorts of things. So it kind of got us to thinking, and this actually happened year after year. It seemed like every time we tried to put together something significant, it would fall apart. And so it just really got us to thinking a little bit more about Christmas and paying more attention to the sermons surrounding Christmas. So we started to hear the pastors that we would listen to who would give some kind of sermon on Christmas. We started to hear them talk about the actual history behind it. And we realized, oh my gosh, this is not something, it doesn't sound like it's something that was created by God. It sounds like it's an actual pagan holiday, which back then I didn't fully understand what pagan meant. I had heard the word thrown around a lot, but it was never really explained to me. I'd heard it in a negative context. But like I said, I didn't understand it because it wasn't really explained to me. So I can remember a pastor saying the original believers who walked with Yeshua or Jesus didn't actually celebrate Christmas, which really, really got me to thinking. I mean, that hit me between the eyes. I was like, whoa, do you mean to tell me Paul didn't actually celebrate Christmas? That was a problem for me. If they didn't celebrate it, then what did they celebrate? And why are we celebrating it now? And they would give us this answer why we celebrated it, which was, oh, well, you know, the world won't accept it unless we celebrate, or we won't accept Christianity unless we celebrate Christmas with them, or something crazy like that. And so we took that and we anointed it and we made it holy. I didn't like that answer. I didn't like that. It didn't sit well with me, because I was kind of thinking, well, wait a minute, what makes us think we can make something like that holy? Especially since God tells us to be set apart. If we're doing exactly the same thing as the rest of the world is doing, how are we being set apart? My eyes also started to become open to scriptures like this in Jeremiah 10:1-5. Learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them. For the customs of the peoples are vanity. A tree from the forest is cut down and worked with an axe by the hands of a craftsman. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with hammer and nails so that it cannot move. Is that not an exact picture of what we have been doing with Christmas trees? Then it goes on to say, their idols are like scarecrows in a cucumber field, and they cannot speak. They have to be carried, for they cannot walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither is it in them to do good. So then if it's not good, then taking it and anointing it and using it, just like the world does, is probably not good either. So fast forward many years. I chewed on this for a long time. It's really hard to let go of man-made traditions. It's really hard. So, that's why I don't condemn anybody. It's not easy to take that step. I went through it. My husband went through it. We do have some problems with friends and family as a result of it. That's how being set apart is. So anyway, I started questioning God. I knew I realized I'm not going to get the answers from these pastors. They keep telling me things like, well, you got to take it on faith, or, you just don't understand, or I don't understand why you don't understand. It's a good thing that the whole world accepts celebrating Jesus's birthday. I just have gotten so many things like that. And over time, I got jaded. I was like, obviously, I'm not going to get the answers I need. So I started turning to God. I know it sounds crazy for some people because they think that God doesn't talk. But if he made us and he truly wants a relationship with us, and he tells us in his word that he is a loving Father, then he speaks to us. We just don't know how to listen to him because there are many other voices out there. So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm frustrated. Show me in your word. Show me something. Like, can you give me answers here? And slowly over time, I would read inside the Bible. I would read everything, not just the New Testament. I would read the Old Testament. I would just read it all. And there were things that he started showing me that I was like, but I didn't really have confirmation then. So, this is really a journey over many years. So my husband was in the military, and we got moved to Washington, where we are now. And when we got here, I was so tired of the church and their lies, because by then I knew and I had accepted that I had been lied to. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. There are many, many, many out there who know that they have been lied to, but they don't know what to do about it. And I certainly didn't. And I just was like, Lord, lead me out of this and put me in a place that will actually give me answers based on your opinion. I keep getting man's opinion. I don't want man's opinion. I want yours. I want to know what you want. And that is what ended up leading us to our very first Messianic congregation. Because a very close friend of our family, I ended up explaining my frustrations with her. And she told me she started going to this Messianic congregation, and everything started making sense, finally, to her when she started going to this place. So she advised us to find one in our area. And my husband and I both just knew that had to have been our answer. If you don't know what a Messianic congregation is, they basically bridge the gap between the Jewishness of the Bible and the Christian theology, if you will, of the New Testament. So you've got the Old Testament and the New Testament. They bridge the gap between the two to take the whole counsel of Scripture. So the leadership has all of that knowledge that comes from the Jews, because that's where they got it from. God gave it to them, and they have passed it on generation to generation. And they have the Messiah in there, Messiah as in Yeshua. So we jumped online and we found a congregation right away. We have not left since then. The second we walked in the door, I just knew in my spirit, this is home. I have finally made it home. Now, I'm not going to get into everything else, because there's a lot, and I could be on here talking forever. But as we started integrating in this new congregation and learning more, I thought my brain was going to explode because it was so much information. We started learning about the feasts. Every single feast that is mentioned in the Bible is very, very prophetic. You've got the Passover, you've got Shavuot, which is Pentecost. You've got the Feast of Tabernacles, Yom Teruah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. All of them have very, very deep significance to them and are prophetic in nature. So it takes about a year to go through a cycle of feasts before you really start to feel settled down and like you are truly understanding what is going on here and what they all mean and everything. Sukkot, we started learning. Now, it's not 100% clear when Yeshua was actually born, but the biblical scholars all can agree that the most accurate time that he would have been born was probably during the first day of the Feast of Sukkot. The feast is 7 days long, and then there's an 8th day, which is the Feast of Shemini. That means the Feast of Eternity. So you have the Feast of Tabernacles on the very first day, and that would have been when Yeshua was actually born. It wouldn't have been freezing cold outside at the time, maybe somewhat cool, but not freezing, like in December. It also says in the word somewhere that the shepherds were out with the sheep. Supposedly, the only time they would have actually been out wandering around there close by would have been during the Feast of Tabernacles. So, there are people who say he probably would have been born during Yom Teruah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. He would have been born during Passover, but all the biblical scholars can agree that he would have been born on one of the high holy days. The reason we believe it was during Sukkot is because of the significance of Sukkot. Now, Sukkot being the Feast of Tabernacles, tabernacle means a temporary dwelling. So when God was with the Israelites in the desert, he commanded Moses to create a tabernacle for him, so he could be in a temporary place and put his name above it, where there was fire and cloud above the tabernacle. As soon as that fire or cloud disappeared, the Israelites knew it was time to move on. So God used the tabernacle as a way to dwell temporarily with his people. Now, this obviously was in a spiritual form, but Yeshua, as God, also dwelled among men temporarily. This body is a temporary dwelling for our souls. So this body also is a tabernacle. So for God to come as Yeshua or Jesus, as man, then he temporarily dwelled among us. So this is what makes sense about him having been born during Sukkot. Also, that's not just it. We were commanded by God for our boys to be circumcised on the 8th day after their birth. So if Yeshua was born on the first day of Sukkot, then he would have been circumcised on Shemini, which is the feast of eternity. And not everybody understands the significance behind boys being circumcised, because a lot of that understanding has been lost. But that whenever a boy is circumcised before God, that is the entrance into a covenant for the parents. And honestly, there's a whole bunch of controversy behind this, because some people don't believe that Yeshua was God, whatever. I'm not going to get into all of that, but this is why we believe that Sukkot is when Yeshua was actually born. So this is a big reason why we celebrate Sukkot, because we want to celebrate his coming. We want to celebrate the fact that God dwelled among us temporarily and will do it again. We see in prophecy that he will be doing that again. So these are our personal reasons behind celebrating Sukkot. It's very significant to us. Also, we're commanded by God. And Yeshua himself said, if you love me, keep my commandments. That word commandments, when translated literally, is Torah. That is the Hebrew word for the first 5 books of the Bible. The Hebrew name for the first 5 books of the Bible. So it would have literally been translated, if you love me, then keep my Torah. And in the Torah is where we are commanded to do all these things. Well, I love my God. Very, very much so. I want him to know that I love him back. I show him that by doing what he tells me to do. Just like if I had a loving father, I would obey him. I would do what he told me to do, because I want him to see that I love him. Love is an action. And, I hear a lot of Christians say, which I can understand because I've said the same thing, it's too burdensome to do the Torah. It's impossible to do the law, or Torah, also translated Torah. But the only reason it's impossible to do the Torah is because there are laws for women, laws for men, laws for priests, laws for judges. There are other laws for other things. But being a woman, it's impossible for me to keep a law for a man, because I'm not a man, and vice versa. That's the only reason. And it's not a burden to do the law, unless you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, which would be to follow the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is love. It brings forth life. The letter of the law is not love. It's the opposite. You're doing it out of obligation, not love. Doing anything out of obligation sucks. You want to do it because you love God. So anyway, I hope this makes sense. I hope you can understand all of that. And I hope you do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. Go look it up in the Word. Study to show yourself approved, a workman not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. If there is a right way to divide the word of truth, there is also a wrong way. So find out what the right way is. Ask God, and he will reveal it to you. If you truly in your heart want to know the truth from his perspective instead of man's, he will give it to you. Just remember, there's no condemnation. If you celebrate Christmas, that's between you and God. If you don't celebrate Sukkot and you don't celebrate Christmas, that's between you and God. If you believe differently, in any part of this video you believe differently, that's between you and God, just like it's between me and God. We are all on the path, but we may be on different parts of the path. And so there doesn't need to be any condemnation or judging going on here. God will lead and guide you in your timing, and he will lead and guide us in our timing, or his timing, I should say. We love you guys. Thanks for watching, and have a great Sukkot. Love you. Bye. Mwah.